Blessings, beloveds. Welcome back. I thought I'd quickly jump on and just give a small overview of the sun's ingress into Sagittarius. Well, for various reasons, the energy is so much more uplifting. Scorpio has been a very intense journey, no doubt, for all of us. Again, there's just so much going on. As you know, I'm located in Melbourne, and so we have protests here every single day. We have the weekend ones where we had 500,000 people just in this state alone. 500,000 people last Saturday. This Saturday, we're expecting 1 million just in this city, right? That doesn't even include the rest of the state. So it's it's really intense, really overwhelming, and it's been very exhausting. I've been observing and engaging quite a lot with what's happening because we have a lot of things relative to certain laws being passed here. So that being said, the sun's ingress into Sagittarius certainly does give a greater level of enthusiasm where there's been extreme difficulty in the nature of reality and the consistent intense levels of the program and changes and things that are going on. And of course, there's a collective narrative around that, and then there's our own personal story around that as well. And Scorpio is always a time to go into our soul. It's always a time to go into those deeper layers and have a little look at what's going on inside us. And it's always an opportunity to basically transform things, release, let go, the whole usual thing. You guys know all of that. But the main thing that I wanted to kind of highlight today is I noticed that the sun's ingress in Sagittarius happens to be conjunct the South Node in Sagittarius, right? And it's also lining up with three goddesses, three asteroids. And I thought, well, that's got to mean something. That's got to be important. I don't think it's very typical to see, the sun's ingress, let's just say in this case, Sagittarius, lining up with the nodes, of course, the South Node, North Node. And there's asteroids exactly on those nodes, and then there's an asteroid squaring those nodes. So we have this T-square configuration. And so I've been reflecting on that the last 24 hours. My mic's a little bit hammered, poor thing. And I was asking the goddesses to give me an insight into what are they trying to communicate to us with this energy of this T-square, right? So the universe, as it always does, when you ask, it speaks. You just have to be able to be discerning enough and intuitive enough and observant enough to make those connections. And so here's a little story of what happened to me today, which I'll explain why it actually speaks about these goddesses. So most of you know I've got a cat called Coco, who's my child, more or less. And today I just had her booked in just for a checkup. There's nothing going on with her, but I'm an overprotective mother. So I took her in for a checkup. And when I received the text message this morning, confirmation of my appointment, the text message actually read, in order to enter the premises, only one person can enter and you need to be double vaccinated. So given that I've chosen a path of pro-choice, which is my choice, right? And obviously I don't have any of those things, such as, this thing inserted into my arms. I don't have the applications that require you to show your identity status, etc. Okay, you all know what I'm getting at. So I don't have any of that stuff. And so when I got there, the guy at the door asked me to check in with that thing, that thing that everyone's checking in with. I just don't want to use the names, right, for obvious reasons. And so I said, no, I don't have that. And then he said, can you just write your name and number? Of course, absolutely I can. So I did. And he asked me for documentation to prove my status relative to whether I have had this liquid put into me. And I said, no, I don't have that either. And so basically he just stepped back and he just said, do you have a mask? I said, no, I don't. Never had one. That's me. I'm not saying if you guys want to do all of that, that's all cool. Yeah, I don't care. It's none of my business. I'm just explaining what happened to me today and how I see this as being relevant. So he just literally stepped back and he said, okay, take your kitty, to that section over there. So I walked in, went inside, she was checked out, she's 100% perfect health, praise the Lord, thank you. And that was pretty much it. And I walked out and I left and I thought, okay, so this is this story, because I had a particular stream of thought about what these goddesses are trying to communicate to us. And the experience that I had basically just affirmed the thinking that I had. And it's basically this, right? Let me just bring up the chart actually, because that will help with some visuals. Okay, so just pop myself up there, and what chart have I got? Oops, sorry about that, wrong chart. Okie dokie. There is the sun in Sagittarius. Okay, it went in there a day ago. You can see that the South Node, of course, is right there with it, with the sun. You can also see, let me just highlight. So there's Vesta, the goddess Vesta, the South Node in Sagittarius, the sun in Sagittarius. Okay, so that's a triple conjunction. And that's a very close conjunction because you can see the sun's 1 degree, the South Node is 1 degree, and Vesta is just 3 degrees. Now, the opposite direction, we have, of course, the North Node in Gemini. The nodes are always opposite each other. And here we have the goddess Ceres, okay, at 6 degrees of Gemini. So she's, with no uncertain terms, very close conjunction, right? And obviously opposite all these bodies up here. The third body is Pallas Athena in Pisces, okay, basically forming a square to these goddesses, to the nodes, and to the sun. And whilst there's going to be a lot of other things going on for the season of Sagittarius, which I'm going to come back and cover, as best as I can. I've got the show with Ariel coming up on the 7th of December, and we are going to unpack a lot of material relative to Venus and this very powerful conjunction that she picks up with Pluto, right, which is going to be a very powerful signature for her descent into the underworld before she goes retrograde. But I'll talk about all of that with Ariel. But this is, this is well and truly along the way. Okay, you can see Venus is 15 degrees. She's actually approaching Pluto. She will eventually form a conjunction to Pluto. Now, I'll leave that alone because there's so much juicy things that I want to bring to you about that, but I'll leave it for when I sit with Ariel, which is just, really, God, it's only not even 2 weeks away. Okay. What is going to happen here is that Mercury, which is at 27 degrees of Scorpio on the 24th of November, it's going to ingress into Sagittarius as well. So there's a couple of things happening here. Venus is out of bounds. Mercury is going to be out of bounds. And I was just refreshing my mind about the significance of planets being out of bounds just the last few days, because it's been calling me. It's been calling my attention. And I thought, right, when things call me, when I come across things, when things just kind of flash in my mind, however I receive the information or message, I know that it's an important matter for me to speak on. I just know because I know myself and this is how I operate. So I thought, okay, well, Mercury is going to be out of bounds. Venus is out of bounds. So why is this important at this time? And it's very important, with Venus, for instance, which I don't want to go into that too much because I'll cover that again, as I said, with Ariel. But, Venus in Capricorn out of bounds, forming a conjunction to Pluto. Just understand that that's speaking very much to our own personal values in life at the moment, what we actually value, and how the systems, Capricorn, are somewhat interfering with that, right? Based on the program and the narrative, which, basically includes, certain rules, norms, expectations, mandations, and so forth, right? So it's a very intense energy here with Venus forming a conjunction. Well, she's almost there, forming a conjunction to Pluto. And so first of all, here's the thing: when a planet is out of bounds, and many of us are born with planets out of bounds as well, and you can, check that out yourself. Typically, in summary, there's a lot to this, but just very simply put, a planet out of bounds literally reflects or means what it sounds like. It's going beyond the boundary. Okay, so think about that from a mundane, basic level. A person who pushes beyond the boundaries is typically a person who, first of all, lives outside of the consensus reality, which is ruled by Saturn. And what does Saturn rule? It rules boundaries. Okay, so it's an interesting concept, the whole thing of out of bounds, because it has two sides to it, just like every archetype, just like every aspect, just like every pattern, everything in life. It has two sides to it, particularly because we live in a world of duality, right? And so there's always an equal and opposite reaction to things, and there's always a polarity point to everything. So that is the same thing with a planet being out of bounds. It can basically, through its desire to push the envelope and push beyond the bounds of the restrictions, it can actually accomplish genius type of things, right? Depending on who the person is, and what is the purpose of this pushing beyond the envelope. What are they trying to accomplish, achieve, and create and bring to consciousness, etc. And then the other side, the flip side to that coin, can be that it can also be a person who's very disruptive, through their rebellious, disruptive nature. They can be very destructive as well. So it just depends on how this energy plays out relative to an individual, and certainly how it's going to play out on the collective plane. Now, Mercury goes out of bounds on the 2nd of December and is there until the 27th of December, right? So that's quite some time. Now, I think that's really, really important, because Mercury is going to ingress into Sag. Now, hi, Coco. Do you want to say hello? Tell them all how healthy you are. Sagittarius is every archetype is powerful, beautiful, brilliant, magical, and it has its shadow component as well. Now, Mercury is the ruler of Gemini and Virgo. Okay, so when Mercury goes into Sagittarius, that is the opposite sign of Gemini. Okay, so that places it in its what's called detriment relative to traditional astrology from the point of view of essential dignities and debility. So it is said, therefore, that Mercury in Sagittarius, whilst it can be, the philosopher, the priest, the teacher, the mentor, the one who inspires. Fire always inspires. It is in spirit, inspires, right? So the fire signs are very powerful from the point of view of the way they operate best is when they can be spontaneously free to act and move, right? That's one of the most beautiful descriptions that my mentor actually came up with about the fire signs. That is Aries, Leo, and Sag. So Sagittarius is the last fire sign in the zodiac. So it's actually really, it really depicts consciousness, wisdom, experience, worldly experience, right? It corresponds to the 9th house. The ruler is Jupiter. Jupiter is a benefic, so there's a lot of good things about it. But Mercury in Sagittarius can be very sloppy in terms of its mental analysis to detail. Okay, that's why it's opposite. Gemini has a knack for being very up to date with detail, and particularly Mercury in Virgo is more so that. In Gemini, it can get a little bit lost in a sea of information that can be brilliant from the point of view of being able to draw information from everywhere, right? And so Gemini will just pile up all this information and it'll have it there, and that's great because it just has a lot of skill and talent in resourcing data and information. In Virgo is where it gets scrutinized, analyzed, Virgonized, as I like to say, it gets sorted out, okay? And then in Sag, it actually finds some meaning, right? It expands us into the bigger picture, right? So the problem with Mercury in Sag being out of bounds can be that the information that's being communicated, which has been an ongoing problem for the last 18 months since we've had the nodes in Sagittarius and Gemini, the back story to the current narrative that's been playing out for 18 months or so, the primary problem has been the amount of information that's being spewed out in every direction on the corner of the earth, and the lack of understanding or knowing what is actually true and what is actually not true. And of course, the thing that really contributed to that was the fact that the nodes were actually forming a square to Neptune, okay, at some stage when the nodes were what are you trying to do? When the nodes were, 18, 19, there we go. That's what my mouse is doing weird things. Okay, anyway, there's Neptune. You can see it there at 20 degrees, right? Pisces. So when the nodes were squaring the Neptune, that just really, that just spun the world out of control, right? With the level of deception, confusion, lies, misinformation, etc., etc. Okay, so that's the backdrop, and there's of course all these other layers. So Mercury ingressing into Sagittarius can really take us into a path of, we can tune into a level of real optimism, futuristic visions, intuition. Mercury in Sag is incredible when it comes to intuition, but it can be very sloppy with the data and information, all right? And it can exaggerate things as well. Now, how is that significant to today's story? Well, I got a text message saying that if I wasn't double, I wouldn't be able to enter this establishment. Was that in the end true? It actually wasn't, even though I got a text message from the actual establishment saying to me that that would be the case. But my gut and intuition, when I got that message, just said, nah, just go and everything will be fine. And so here's the other thing with these goddesses, which I forgot, I sort of went around another way. I'll come back now to the goddesses. Because the goddesses are in mutable signs, Sagittarius, Pisces, Gemini, these are all the three mutable signs. Mutable signs in the zodiac basically ask us to be flexible and to be fluid. Okay, and that's the capacity that they enable us with. Once we tune into this energy, the ability to be fluid and move in and out, as opposed to being fixated, and having blinkers on with absolutely everything, our perspectives, what we are listening to, what we are communicating, what we are absorbing, etc., etc. Mutability is fantastic from the point of view of being able to be fluid in your mind, in your body, in actions, movements, thought processes, and so forth. So it's an incredibly powerful thing, right? Where it can actually, its shadow side would be that mutability, because it has that fluid movement, and we can get so bombarded or sidetracked or misguided as well, because we are just so busy kind of moving in all different directions. Mutability also means that we may possibly commit to 500 things just to exaggerate, right? And in reality, can we actually really honor all those commitments in the time frame that we have kind of set ourselves to do it in? No, we can't. That's the reality, right? But this is the thing about mutability. It wants to kind of connect to so many different things, and it goes in all sorts of different directions, and it's wonderful for experience and so forth, but it can leave us feeling quite drained. So the main message that the goddesses gave to me through this T-square is Pallas Athena in the sign of Pisces really does give us psychic vision. It's clairvoyance, actually, obviously at the highest level. Pallas Athena, the warrior goddess, the goddess of wisdom, the feminine counterpart of Jupiter, the daughter of Jupiter, Zeus, the protector of Athens, Greece, who was an incredible, strategic, intelligent goddess who fought with her mind. She was born from Zeus's head. In Pisces, she has clairvoyant talent and abilities. So she's been in Pisces for quite some time, but here she is coming into a square aspect with the Sun, the nodes, Vesta and Ceres, particularly while the Sun has just ingressed into Sagittarius. This is the lineup that comes up, right? Because the square between Ceres and Pallas Athena and Vesta, that's been there a little bit longer, but I think what's going to draw the centralized focus around it is the fact that the Sun is there, because the Sun it's the core central sense of our own identity and life. The fact that you breathe and are alive is because of the sun, the sun's rays. So it's a very centralized component of ourself and a centralized experience of life, right? So these goddesses here in this T-square are asking us to be fluid with our beliefs, Sagittarius, with the data and information and communication and the things that we pick up on, the things that we share, the things that we read, Gemini. And in Pisces, there's a tension point there because it's a T-square, and a T-square is two planets opposite each other, as you can see, in this case, Vesta and Ceres. Ceres is the goddess of nurture or loss of nurture, or what we need to feel nurtured. And in Gemini, the primary message with Ceres in Gemini has been about all of us needing to have a voice on what we perceive and what we think with everything that's going on. And a lot of that has been shut down. There's the loss. Ceres brings up loss and grief, right? Now, Vesta in Sagittarius is the absolute one-pointed focus and direction into something we devote ourselves to. In this case, it's Sagittarius, so it's got to do with our level of faith and wisdom, okay? Level of optimism, through finding meaning in the chaos. Vesta in Sagittarius, that's finding meaning in the chaos is what can actually restore some faith for us, right? Sagittarius. And the Pallas Athena in Pisces being square is saying be fluid, but be very careful with your held righteous beliefs, Sagittarius, and your level of so-called knowledge, right, and understanding, Gemini, right? Be careful not to be too dogmatic, Sagittarius, and spew out unnecessary words, Gemini, onto everything, the story, others, etc., etc. And instead, allow Pallas Athena in Pisces to filter through this Sag Gemini axis with Vesta and Ceres there to help you actually really open the third eye, the pineal gland, to trust your visions. Now, Sagittarius is intuition as well, as is Pisces. So there's a strong intuitive faculty coming through here. Now, everything I'm saying is only really in play for a few days' time, because once the sun starts to, move through Sagittarius, it's obviously going to move away from the South Node, from Vesta, Pallas Athena, Ceres, etc. But it is there for a few days. So it is a real opportunity to actually examine these levels of our own psyche, mind, beliefs, Sagittarius, intuition, Sagittarius. Pisces can also be confusion. And because it is a square here, Pallas Athena in Pisces could bring up confusion. It could, but does it have the potential to give us clear seeing? Because that's what Pallas Athena represents, clear seeing. She's the goddess that basically removes all the projections, right, that actually are, how we could say, unhealthy projections. The removal of unhealthy projections is what Pallas Athena assists in. So she has clear seeing, and here she is forming this very powerful T square just as the sun has ingress into Sagittarius. So I think there's an important message here about being fluid, about remaining optimistic, about being in touch with faith, but not being dogmatic with your own set of beliefs, whatever they are. And also, just wanting everybody to have the same belief you have. We all have different beliefs. Truth is a pathless land. Krishnamurti, I always use that quote because it's just so poignant with signatures like this. So moving back to Mercury, as I said, it's going to ingress into Sag. It's going to be out of bounds because it's in Sag, which is in its detriment, and it's going to be out of bounds. It can totally flood the mercurial pathways, the mental pathways, that is information in the whole world, and it can literally blow things out of proportion at worst, exaggerate, all the shit stuff that's going on, right? It can be very sloppy in assessment of detail information, right? So imagine that in the hands of people who are inclined to be deceptive, misleading, misguiding, putting misinformation out there, and so forth. That can be a problem, right? On the other hand, it can also be the energy of the collective, the souls on the planet, out of bounds, Mercury out of bounds, pushing the envelope of the restrictions, Saturn. Now we are approaching the last square between Saturn and Uranus. Okay, that comes up next month. So we are now gearing into its last and final dance, and that's why things are really picking up momentum again. As I've said before, I can't cover every single detail of what's going on in every single country and state, although I'm aware of a lot of places, a lot of things that are going on. But certainly here in this state, it is phenomenal. It's truly historical times all around the world. But at the moment here, there's huge stuff going on. So it's going to be interesting because next week there might be a decision based on this new bill that's trying to be passed through Parliament, which essentially goodbye sovereignty, goodbye freedom, goodbye democracy in this state. It's very heavy and very serious what's going on here. But there's a very, very powerful push and force that's trying to shut it down, which is the people. And various politicians are on board as well, thankfully. We'll see what happens, because by the time Mercury gets into Sag and is out of bounds, that's when it's likely that this decision will be made. So I'll be very curious to track that and see what happens. From our own perspective, though, our personal individualized perspective, we can expect to feel a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more optimistic about the future, regardless of our choice in whichever direction that has been. But there's just, it seems to me that there is a lot of evidence pointing to information and details of things that we didn't have 18 months ago, didn't even have 6 months ago, certainly not 12 months ago. So the more this continues, the more it opens up, the more people speak up, the more we are discovering and learning. But I think we still need to use discernment. We need to use our own discernment and be careful not to get caught up too much in the complete overabundance of Sagittarius people's beliefs, and Gemini just a whole bunch of data and information. And where is the truth? It's usually somewhere in the middle, isn't it? And that's up to each of us to find that and connect with that. So that's all I wanted to share today, because I don't have much time. I've got to move on. I will be back, though, to talk about some further transitions of things that are going on. Yeah. Whew, it's interesting times as it as it has been for quite a while. Okay, so hoping you're all doing well and navigating your way through everything that's going on. I guess the energy has it's picking up. It's picking up because of the sun just moving into Sag. I'll leave you with this analogy, which I often use even in my readings as well. When you go through Scorpio, whether that's going through, having planets moving through the eighth house, now you could have this as, permanent life themes as well. Secondary progressed moon moving through the eighth house, heavy Pluto transits, etc. Or just Scorpio season alone, which, we had the Scorpio season, we had the Scorpio new moon, we had the lunar eclipse, Taurus lunar eclipse, there's a lot of Scorpio stuff going on. And Mars is still in Scorpio and will be there for a little while longer. It's like being in the cave, the Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Some of you are too young to know that. But there's a scene where he's in a cave, it's pitch black dark, he's in complete danger, but he makes it out, and he's snakes around him, threats, all that sort of stuff's going on. It's literally felt like that here as well, here on, especially here in Melbourne where I am, there's some weird stuff going on. And it's felt like a very threatening kind of energy and environment and space in a lot of ways, particularly because of the sinister snakes in Parliament, right, which have very specific agendas and are just completely blind, right? So we have all that going on, but the light at the end of the tunnel is actually Sagittarius, right? So when you get out of the Scorpio pit, the snake pit, you actually ascend into the bright blue sky, which is Jupiter, which is Sagittarius, which is that sudden burst of freedom, basically, right? So let's see how things continue to unfold. See you guys soon. Sending you so much love, and thank you all for your continued love and support and blessings. I love you all so much. Thank you.